Well, we are here today to talk about unlocking manufacturing intelligence. How do we leverage AI in the regulated industries? And hopefully you can walk away with some practical tips and tricks that we've seen. We work with about 1,300 medtech and life sciences companies across the globe. So what are we seeing that's working in this space? There we go. To let you know who I am. My name is Matt Lowe, and I am the Chief Strategy Officer for MasterControl. MasterControl has been providing quality management solutions into the medtech space for over 30 years now. And for the last 6-7 years, we've also entered the manufacturing execution space with electronic device history records and batch records. And most recently, we've also entered the CMMS space and asset management. So think asset performance management type software. So been doing this for a long time. I was just telling some folks in the back, this is my 3rd decade at this show. Prior to coming to MasterControl, I did product development and product management in the medtech space myself, primarily Class II implantables. So it's always good to come back to Anaheim in February, get out of the snow and the cold, or the not so much snow in Salt Lake City this year. But happy to be with you guys, and hopefully you learn a few things today. So just taking a look at kind of what we'll cover today. I'm going to talk about what we're seeing across a broad cohort of medtech companies. What are they experiencing? Where are they at in their journey? What kinds of challenges are they encountering? And how can we begin to overcome those challenges? We'll talk about human in the loop and how important that is in our regulated space. I always tell people that regulated manufacturers is probably one of the last places that the humans will go, because it's really hard for FDA to put a machine in jail. There's no throat to choke in that case. So human in the loop, very important. How do you build the proper foundation for AI? What are some use cases where we're seeing traction amongst our clients with our products as well as with other AI products? And then ultimately, what are some strategies for success as you go forward? So first, let's talk about the breadth of the spectrum that we see in AI readiness. Maybe before I go there, by a raise of hands, how many of you feel like your organization is ready for AI? Okay, we got a couple. That's good. What we see, and we do a lot of primary research with our client base and the broader medtech space, we are seeing folks at least claiming that the manual side of what they do has greatly diminished. Now, you see it going from 12% to 1% in a single year. I have a hard time believing it, maybe again by a raise of hands. How many people still have paper on the manufacturing floor? Okay, several, yeah. That we see all the time, particularly with device history records and batch records, and logbooks are another good example. We still see a lot of paper there. And paper and AI don't really mix, right? It's really hard to operate AI on stuff that's locked away in Iron Mountain or bankers' boxes sitting up on the mezzanine above the clean room. I see some chuckles out there. I've been there. I've seen it too. Now, what we do see, digitization, that is the first step. It's taking that manual stuff, it's getting it into a digital record. But just stopping there is not going to yield the benefits that AI can produce. And you really need to progress down that journey into what we call a connected state. and ultimately the intelligent state. That's where we all want to land. It's the holy grail that we're all striving for. Now, when I say connected, that means your data is at least in a place where it's been brought together. So you think about ERP, your QMS, your manufacturing execution system, maybe you have a LIMS. How do you get all of that data in a state where it's commonly understood, it's accessible? That's probably one of the most important parts, so that you can begin to operate AI, machine learning, and ultimately move into an agentic space. You can see that intelligent cohort still very, very small. Not a lot of people in that space yet, and that holds with what we see in the broader industry. Now, in the digitized state, digitization is the act of taking, paper manual stuff and making it digital. And then you've got digitalization, or the digital transformation. That's moving from just digitizing to that connected state and ultimately the intelligent state. Now, obviously, we still have paper out there in spite of what the survey says. You get critical insights that are trapped inside of what we call islands of automation. So you may have pieces of your process that have been digitized, but it's not communicating with anything else. So how do you get the data out of there? How do you combine it with other sources to make sense of it? And ultimately, how do you set up the streaming pipelines that AI is going to need to consume that data? So challenges there. Now, for the folks that have connected operations, there are some different types of challenges. Mass amounts of data. Often that has not been homogenized in any way so that it can be understood with a common language and a common set of parameters. So that in and of itself might be the hardest step in preparing your organization for AI. I know when we did it for our own operation, we're a software company, so we use it for different things than you might use it for. But we got way ahead on the connection of data sources about 6 years ago. We brought all of our data sources into a single repository. We got very tight governance on the data so that we didn't have system administrators for ERP changing a value in the item master that all of a sudden breaks everything that we do. The auditing process that goes with that data, also very important. You need an alerting engine that will tell you when somebody changes a field or a naming convention that is going to have impacts downstream that will make it very difficult for you to operate the advanced technologies. So getting your arms around that, getting a plan for it, getting the governance and the auditing structure in place, absolutely foundational for being able to use AI in meaningful ways. So unique challenges in both camps, we're seeing that. Now, whether you're up at the front end of the process or maybe you're further down the journey, either way, people are still struggling with achieving operational intelligence. And what are we finding that has created that hurdle? What we often hear, the data challenges we just talked about, that's probably the most fundamental, but also concerns from a regulatory perspective. How is FDA or your notified body going to view that and how you're using it? Is it doing decisioning? Is it assistive in nature? A lot of questions out there from the regulation perspective. Now, there's a little footnote there at the bottom. Still a lot of pain around compliance issues. GMP documentation, data integrity. Yet we still see folks really struggling in that area. So let's dive in a little bit deeper on the challenges specific to regulated environments, which is why we're all here. What we are seeing is FDA taking a fairly forward-thinking stance here. We're fortunate enough, we're located, our headquarters are in Salt Lake City, Utah, and about 2 miles from our office is one of the FDA individuals that works in OCP that has been very involved in the way that FDA is thinking about AI. We've had some really in-depth conversations with her. Machine learning algorithms, they seem to have a pretty good handle on it at this point. Generative AI causes problems because it's non-deterministic in nature. You don't get the same answer every time. And it's really hard to regulate for those types of things. There's still a lot of work to be done there. One of the things that we are seeing is an accelerating pace of approval of devices that incorporate AI and machine learning. So not that long ago, I'm going to need to get a drink here, fewer than 400 5 years ago. Whew. There we go. Over 9, goodness, over, I'll get it together here. Almost 1,000 now that have been approved. So you see the FDA evolving in their thinking. We see the PCCP framework that it's predetermined change control plans. If you're doing AI in your devices, I highly recommend you take a look at that. ChatGPT will give you a great summary of what's being done there. It basically allows you, goodness, to lay out a plan. Yeah, oh, thank you. Shoe's got a cough drop. Appreciate it. It allows you to lay out a plan that basically you tell the FDA, here are the boundaries within which I'm going to operate. And so it allows you to make changes within those boundaries without having to go through a letter to file or even a refiling. So really important as we continue to advance in this AI space. Transparency, very important in this case. Understanding what are the models doing? Where is the data coming from? How is it flowing? Do I expect this answer? Or is it way out in left field? You've got to be able to have a defensible position there. So just some things to think about specifically around AI incorporated in your device. So let's move into the human in the loop conversation here. So we like to talk about AI augmenting humans rather than replacing them. I think there will certainly be jobs that don't exist a couple years from now that exist today. On the other hand, there will be jobs that exist 2 years from now that do not exist today. And so it is an enabling technology. And one of the big challenges that I think we have in our industry in particular over the next several years is upskilling our staff and making sure that we're using these technologies to attract young people out of college, wherever it may be they're coming from, into this industry. I mean, if you get somebody fresh out of college, they're out on the shop floor, and you hand them a paper device history record, they'll think an alien has landed in the room. They were born with an iPad or a phone in their hand, right? So it's imperative for us as an industry to make sure that we're making those advances. So human in the loop. Obviously, it's an oversight thing, right? Humans are making the decisions. The machine is not making the decision. It may be presenting us with data and information, but at the end of the day, it's the human that makes the decision there. I just talked about explainability, transparency, the importance of that, understanding why AI is giving me a particular recommendation. That requires deep domain expertise as well. It's in the coding side of things. We're a software developer. We are heavily leveraging AI coding tools now. The interesting thing is the people it benefits most are those that are most senior, because they can look at it and they can understand very quickly if it's way out in left field. It's much harder to detect if there are small variations here and there, but they can spot the problems very quickly. Now, on the flip side, we see developers coming out of school that have gone through school with these tools. And so their entire workflow is just very different than a senior engineer who may have been coding for the last 20 years. We literally see new grads come out that have an army of agents that are working for them. They tell them what to do before they sign off at night. The agents work all night long. They come in the morning, they review the code, they fix a few things, they send them maybe in a different direction, and the agents begin working again. So it's just an entirely different software development lifecycle than what we've been accustomed to for many, many years. And it's different on the manufacturing floor. Do I ever think we'll reach a true lights-off type operation? Maybe, but it's still a long ways off. It requires Optimus, right? Elon needs to get going on those humanoid robots so that we can actually see something like that. Governance. Again, extremely important here. What models are you allowing to do what? Where are the agents operating? What policies and procedures do you have that ensure the human in the loop piece so that there's proper workflow and approvals and authority that go into the work that the AI is doing? There are ISO certifications now around AI and the accountability and responsible use of AI. We went through a certification ourselves. It's ISO 42001, all about the responsible use of AI. So I think we'll see more and more of that. We're seeing frameworks in Europe already that are legislating AI on a broad basis. I think we'll begin to see it more and more in the US. We know that FDA has released several guidances over the past couple years on AI here. So I can't stress enough the governance portion of this. That's probably where things will go awry if we don't put those things in place. Skynet could become a real thing, right? Oh. So the foundation. This again really is around the data piece. 93% of the folks that we talk to say that they still have disconnected and siloed data out on the production floor. You've got a data historian. It's collecting all kinds of data. Where's the data going? What is it connected to? What other sources is it combined with? How many people have machines with their own data recorders on them in one form or another? I mean, I still see a lot of building management systems with the old spiral charts for temperature and humidity. There's a lot of automation out on the floor, but very little of the data is in a state where it can actually be leveraged and used for making decisions. So this, again, is probably the biggest point I can make. Integrated systems. number one prerequisite. It's also the number one barrier that we see out there. So you can see the other things there. Yeah, you need a data lake, you need a warehouse, there has to be alignment. But at the end of the day, lacking the integration of the systems and the data that they're outputting, going to be really difficult to get AI in a position where it can actually do some good for the company. So if we kind of step through the foundation here, digitization, very beginning, right? Let's make sure it's in a digital record that can actually be fed somewhere and integrated somewhere. Real-time data. You don't want stuff that is days or hours old because you don't want to make retrospective decisions. You want to make proactive decisions. Data maturity. This is the journey that we have undertaken internally with our own processes. Getting all those sources in the right spot, ensuring the data quality, ensuring a common language across the data sources. What are your parameters and your variables called? So that a product SKU here means a product SKU there and there. You don't want the same thing being called lots of different things, right? Governance, we talked about that. AI readiness, that's where we start to get into, okay, now I've got my data in a place where I can actually leverage it. What kinds of things can I do with AI? And I tell people all the time, for about the last 24 months, I've been a technologist for 20 years now, and there has never been a more exciting time than there is today. The foundational models, think your Claude and your ChatGPT and Gemini, they are advancing the state of the art every 3 to 4 weeks. Not months, not years, weeks. And it's really hard to keep up in an environment like that. The pace of change it's unlike anything I've seen before. So identifying use cases, start small, pilot. What can I get quick results from that I can evaluate? I think about this in terms of a risk-based approach. We've all been using a risk-based approach for our entire careers. Why wouldn't we apply it to AI use cases as well? Let me identify something that'll give me a quick return, but is relatively low risk. I can learn a lot from that. And then I can start to step into more and more impact that comes with greater risk because I've learned things on the smaller items. And then ultimately, you get to actual AI implementation. What does the tool set look like? How does the data streaming look? What data warehousing solution are you using? Is it Databricks? Is it Snowflake? Is it S3 buckets in Amazon? You have all kinds of choices out there. What we've found is probably the most important part of this step is constant evaluation. How do you get feedback loops into the hands of your users so that they can tell you if it's working or not? It's great to put tools out there, but if people use them once or twice and it gives them an unexpected result, how do you hear about that and how do you adjust and make those changes? And then once you've identified something that you're like, yep, okay, I've got my hands around the risk, I have a good governance process in place, I know that my data is solid there, now you can begin to scale those tools. I believe that 26 and 27 are the years for scaling. I think we've seen a lot of benefits from POC and concept type things going on out there, but how do we get this out to the masses now? And that's where you look to application developers like ourselves, whatever softwares you are using, how are they getting those use cases and tools in the context of your workflows that you're already using today? Because if you've got to go somewhere else and then come back to what you're doing for your regular work, it's really hard to scale something like that. So I was speaking with a manufacturing leader at Pfizer toward the end of last year. My marketing department made me tone down his language a little bit here, so it's been sanitized to protect the innocent. But he said, if I hear one more person mention agentic AI and then realize they're using paper batch records, I'm going to scream. Yeah, it's the very first step, right? Why are you talking to me about agentic AI if everything I need is locked away in that banker's box? So really, I think it sums up well the foundation. So use cases. What are we seeing out there in the wild? One that we see a lot of traction with right now is in the predictive maintenance area. Now, this box differs a little bit from the others. It kind of points out some of the challenges that we've had for predictive maintenance in the past. You know, physical records, highly disconnected, the insights I can't get to, manual data entry. Well, if you think about the maintenance space, you know, calibration, preventative maintenance, these things are typically done on a cadence. Why are they done on a cadence? Because it's the easiest thing for us to track. Now, if I could tell you that I can calibrate this instrument or this piece of equipment once every 18 months instead of once every 6 months because of the data that's coming off of usage sensors, because of algorithms that I've run against the drift that determine, yeah, 6 months is just way too often. You don't need to do that. Now, all of a sudden, you reduce the cost of actually doing the maintenance, but you also increase the uptime of the machine or the instrument because you're doing those activities far less frequently. So really good uptake here on the predictive maintenance side. It's really important with those that you have a good IoT strategy because it is reliant on data. You know, how often is that machine actually being used? The next one that I've got up there is around tech transfer and scale up. Imagine being able to take all of the output of your R&D process, your feasibility phase in your design history, and feed that into production and have it ingested in a way that it creates the production documentation, the device master record, the device history records that go with it, the scale up piece. You know, I'm going from producing batches of 20 to batches of 1,000. How does that change things? How can I simulate that? We see tremendous opportunity in the tech transfer side of things. Exception management, very near and dear to us as a quality management system vendor. This is something we've been dealing with for a long time. But going from reactive event logging to proactive prevention of events. So I start, if you think about when you bring together your manufacturing and your quality data sets, add to that the equipment piece, you've really got man, method, and machine at that point. As you look for patterns in that data set, now the machine can begin to alert you to situations that it's seen in the past that have led to quality events, scrap, heaven forbid, a recall out in the field. Yet the amount of data and the amalgamation of that much data would be very difficult for us as humans to spot those patterns. That is what AI is really, really good at. So imagine now your operator, they're out on the floor, you know, they're entering the data's coming off the machines, it's coming from third-party systems. The intelligence now begins to detect a pattern that it saw, 4 years ago with a particular batch, and it says, hey, operator, we saw this problem before. This is how it was fixed. We would recommend that you make this change now to prevent this lot from being scrapped. So that's where you start to get into golden batch type scenarios. which again is kind of the holy grail of what we're after here. Goes right along with the process optimization piece. So not only is it looking for those patterns that will lead to a problem, but it's also recommending changes based on what it's seen in the past. You know, could even get down to the level of, you know what, on third shift, they're doing this. If we implement that on first shift, we're going to get the same result and improve our throughput and reduce quality issues. So lots of exciting things out there. Some of these, you know, we're seeing gains now. Like I say, the predictive maintenance is one area. Tech transfer to an extent, we're seeing some things there. Ourselves, we have experimented, for example, we actually have a tool out in the wild that will take your paper logbooks and convert them to digital with all of the intelligence, limits, review schedules, everything right in the software. So continuing to make gains there. So some real world results. These come from a study that Deloitte did. They are consistent with what we're seeing as well. 10-to-1 ROI within 2 years. This is really what the AI hype is about. It's about cost saving. Yeah, how do we get costs down? How do we increase throughput? And how do we improve quality? If I can do all of those while simultaneously reducing risk, those are all the things that our management staff cares about. 30% reduction in quality review times. We actually see better than 50% in our own customer base with a lot release. So reviewing the device history record using a review by exception methodology. Talked earlier about reduction in maintenance costs, improved uptime, lifespan extension of the equipment, reduced downtime, and ultimately fewer device failures. This is a piece that people overlook often in the AI world. Has anybody been following Moltbook? Does that sound familiar? This thing is fascinating. If you haven't, Moltbook is a social media site designed exclusively for AI agents, so no human intervention. So these agents are out, tweeting to each other all the time effectively. It's very interesting to watch their behavior. It went up last week, I believe. By the weekend, they had discovered that they had exposed their entire database and all the API connections to it. AI is very bad at cybersecurity. My son is a cybersecurity engineer. He's constantly sending me stuff. Oh, Dad, you won't believe what these guys did. He set up a website, and 4 hours later, somebody overseas, a nefarious actor, had seized control of it because they failed to put the proper security measures in place. So really, really important in this case. Model training, making sure that you have the governance and the controls in place, that you don't have employees that are inadvertently feeding proprietary data out into the public sphere. This was a pretty sensational case. Sony, right at the beginning of large language models, realized that they had leaked a bunch of proprietary data because people were feeding it out to ChatGPT and Gemini and those public source LLMs. Remember that they're ingesting all of that data, and it could show up in an answer to a question that your closest competitor has asked. So us personally, we have our own internalized GPTs. They're exclusive to us. They're entirely within our cloud privacy boundary. There's no training occurring outside of what we do with it. So those things are very well understood and very well locked down. The governance framework, roles and authority, data classification becomes very important in this area. What things am I really worried about? What things am I less worried about? And everything in between. Being able to tag that data, knowing exactly what to do with it, how to deal with it, which policies and procedures should apply to which classes of data. That's going to put you way ahead, and you don't get bogged down in bureaucratic decision making that way. Obviously, regulatory alignment. We've got to do what we're required to do by law. So some strategies for success here. Start with digitization. This is that foundation. Identify those high-value, low-risk use cases that you can learn on. Get some wins under your belt before you swing for the fences. The human-in-the-loop piece, again, critical for our regulated space. Have a plan for compliance out of the gate. And there are a lot of frameworks, as I mentioned, that are coming out. Investigate those and see if they're right for your business, because they can save you time in laying that foundation. Robust governance, non-negotiable, and then monitor and improve continuously. That's that eval feedback loop. How do I make sure that what I'm putting out there is actually helping people? So kind of some takeaways, a little bit of a repeat of what we just went through, but the high value opportunities, balancing your innovation with compliance. You don't want to over-index one way or the other. You'll either end up in trouble or you won't be able to get anywhere because the compliance has tied your hands in one way or another. Human in the loop. Securing your secure data and classifying that data so that you know it needs to be secured in a specific way. Maximize the data insights. What are you actually getting out of there? What decisions can you make? I think when AI goes from being purely assistive to authoritative is when we'll see the real gains from a cost and efficiency perspective. If you think about it in a purely assistive way, well, we become the bottleneck. The bottleneck just moves, right? So how do we create a world in which we, as the human in the loop, still have the ultimate decision-making power, but we've enabled agents in a way that they can help us make those decisions faster and more clear than we ever have before. So assistive, authoritative, that's going to be a big thing in the AI lexicon over the next couple years here.